We're living in a time period where it's not even a joke anymore to say, when did we step into the Twilight Zone? The Twilight Zone has become reality. Science fiction has become science fact. They're fully admitting now that they have technology which can transmit audio directly into your ears from a distance without anyone else around you knowing that it's happening to you. So they can put voices in your head, and they're admitting it now. This is technology that's been around on record since at least the 70s, and they've always kind of denied that it's true, and they've made people who claim they're targeted by such technology sound like crazy lunatics who have schizophrenia or mental problems or something like that. But now, well, this is going to be commercially viable tech that they're going to try and find a reason why we need to have such a thing and say that it's all good. And this is in futurism.com, but it's based on a press release that came out of Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They used a laser to transmit audio directly into someone's ears. And it says, scientists have figured out how to use a laser to transmit audio ranging from music to speech to a person across a room without any receiver equipment. It says, our system can be used from some distance away to beam information directly into someone's ear. MIT researcher Charles M. Wynn said in a press release, it is the first system that uses lasers that are fully safe for the eyes and skin to localize an audible signal to a particular person in any setting. And they published a paper in the Journal of Optic Letters, and they describe how they have two different methods to transmit tones, music, and recorded speech to a person's ears directly via a laser. It says the technique allowed them to transmit sound to a person more than 8 feet away at a volume of 60 decibels, which is about the loudness of background music or a conversation in a restaurant, without anyone between the source of the sound and the target hearing it. So if this was going on and you were sitting in a room, someone 8 feet away is beaming words into your mind, you're hearing voices. If you don't know that's happening to you, you're just going to suddenly think you've got schizophrenia and you've gone insane because you're going to just suddenly be hearing voices and nobody else around you is going to hear it. And so no one else is going to know what's going on and you'll just look like an insane person. And I just want to point this out because, like I said before, they act like they haven't had this for a really long time. But it quietly came out back in the 70s that they were using pulsed microwaves to do this to people in military laboratories. And one such book is this one, Microwave Auditory Effects and Applications by James C. Lynn. This came out in 78, but it's talking about a paper from 75. I mean, these are not things that were widely released to the public. Oh, hey, by the way, military's figured out how to do this. They just quietly put it in the middle of a very dense science book that probably hardly anybody was even reading or had a copy of at the time. But it talks about how direct communication of speech via appropriate modulation of microwave energy has been demonstrated by Sharp and Grove. They tape recorded each of the single syllable words for digits between 1 and 10. So they counted between 1 and 10 and taped themselves saying it. And then the speech wave forms of each word were converted to digital signals in a fashion, and they radiated themselves with this speech modulated microwave energy, and they were able to hear and identify and distinguish the words just simply by being radiated with the microwave energy. But it goes on to say that communication of more complex words and full sentences wasn't attempted because at that time the power density that would be required to transmit those messages would have exceeded the safety guide for radiation exposure. Of course, I've already done videos on how that is a joke in this country anyway, but not the point. They claimed they didn't go further with it because they didn't want to mess with the safety limit. You can choose to believe that if you want to, but obviously research on this did not stop because then by 1989 you had a patent get awarded with a seemingly benign, boring title that no one would really pay attention to, hearing device. The patent, if you read the abstract, says it's a method and apparatus for simulation of hearing in mammals by introduction of a plurality of microwaves into the region of the auditory cortex. By this method, sounds are perceived by the mammal, which are representative of the original sound received by the microphone, which is a really arduous way of just straight up saying they were able to talk into a microphone and beam it into the heads of quote-unquote mammals And obviously they're talking about a person, because this is the head of, obviously looks like the head of a human being down here in the drawing, being beamed with microwave radiation. Doesn't look like just any mammal. It's a person, so they're just being really vague and ridiculous in their language. But basically, this is what came to be known as voice-to-skull technology. And now we live in a world where they're just openly admitting they have this now. And they're going to use lasers now to do this. So this is totally full-on military technology, and they're going to try and push it into the public domain and make it justifiable that we would have what could essentially be used as a torture device to make people think they're going insane by hearing voices in their head from a distance where no one around them can even pick up on it. I mean, it sounds like a science fiction nightmare come true. And here, listen to this justification they say here in this article. It says, they believe further research will allow them to scale up the transmission device, which would make the technique useful in dangerous situations, such as during a mass shooting, where authorities could beam instructions directly to individuals without anyone else hearing them. Really? That's the justification for having such a device, is so that the authorities can beam instructions directly into people's heads. That doesn't sound like a slippery slope that could be misused in 1,000+ different other ways. Give me a break. But I guess people are going to be willing to accept that intrusion because it's for your safety, right? It's for your security. So everyone's willing to trade their freedom inside their own brain for the security of that. And obviously there's no way that could be abused, right? I mean, how naive are they going to pretend to be about this? I mean, how many different ways can this technology be used in a positive way versus how many different ways can this technology be abused in a evil villain in a science fiction movie kind of way? I mean, it doesn't take an MIT researcher to ask that question. We hope that this will eventually become a commercial technology, researcher Ryan M. Sullenberger said. There are a lot of exciting possibilities, and we want to develop the communication technology in ways that are useful. Yeah, you do? Useful to whom? Okay? That would be my question. This is what... I'm just thinking of 7 years of targeted individuals contacting us with their stories that all sound horrifying, and you can never tell if what they're saying to you is real, it seems real enough to them, or if they're just insane. Well, guess what? This technology exists, and they're just now deciding they're going to widespread announce it to the public.
This is the story of a 30-year search by U.S. intelligence agencies to perfect mind control. Some of those engaged in that search have agreed to talk about it for the first time. One said, "I think every last one of us felt sorry to attempt this kind of thing. We knew we were crossing the line." The search would be endless. From brothels, an agent says, we learned a lot about human nature in the bedroom, to the mystical rites of a magical mushroom ceremony performed by an Indian shaman, to a Spanish bull ring. The bull has had electrodes implanted in the brain and is controlled by a scientist. There would be victims. One intelligence agency tried to peel this man's mind back to reveal its deepest secrets.
Lived through it. I lived through it.
This man worked on some of these programs. He would write of his work, "It was fun, fun, fun."
We are not professing to tell you the complete story of these activities. We are professing to tell you the complete story that we know.
Right.
But these records that we've uncovered don't tell the story. They tell pieces of it.
This is a story that has been told in bits and pieces. This is an attempt to pull most of it together. We know we don't have the full story. We do, however, have some striking new revelations and insights. It was here that the first halting steps toward mind control began. The shaper and molder of OSS was General Wild Bill Donovan. He said of his group's work, "We may have made mistakes, but we were not afraid to try things that were never done before." In this anything-goes atmosphere, Donovan appointed this man, Stanley Lovell, a Boston industrialist, to break new ground in many scientific and technical fields. Donovan called Lovell his Dr. Moriarty, after the fiendish professor in Sherlock Holmes. Lovell liked the name and posed for this Saturday Evening Post photo. He later wrote of his OSS job that it was, quote, to stimulate the Peck's bad boy beneath the surface of every American scientist and to say to him, throw all of your normal law-abiding concepts out of the window. Here's a chance to raise merry hell. It was in this atmosphere that the search for mind control began. This bizarre man would be an active participant in that search over the next 2 decades. His name is George White, an OSS captain who had formerly been with the Bureau of Narcotics. In his diary, seen here publicly for the first time, White left a legacy of the darker side of American intelligence work. He received his early OSS training at the British-run school at Oshawa, Canada, the same school where Ian Fleming, the creator of James Bond, was trained. White referred to the school in his diaries as the Oshawa School of Mayhem and Murder. Mike Burke, former OSS colleague of White's and now president of Madison Square Garden Center.
Very compelling fella, mysterious fella, almost mystical fella. He was fascinating because you knew something about him, but not enough about him to really get a fix on him. He also knew a great deal about the swifter elements of society, the gamier side of life, and he was very impressive in his technical knowledge of the underworld, so to speak.
He said, one of our men gets beat up. He says, you have to act real fast and teach these guys a lesson.
Charles Siragusa, a former narcotics officer and friend of White's.
He'll come around, he says, and break your kneecaps. And with that, one guy laughed, and George would always have a little Billy with him. And this one guy saw us naked. George White turned around and whapped him across the neck with it. Then he picked up a pool stick and started beating everybody up.
He made his point.
And he made his point.
George White was not a man of understatement or subtleties. His boss at OSS, Stanley Lovell, referred to him as deadly and dedicated. In this note from White's diaries, it says, call Lovell regarding TD. TD was a rather transparent cover for Truth Drug. George White worked with the Truth Drug Committee here at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in the nation's capital. They experimented with mescaline, scopolamine, and marijuana on unwitting victims. The committee soon learned there was no easy panacea, no truth drug at this stage. But White and later colleagues would not stop trying. The goal remained the same. As this 1952 CIA memo says, the aim is controlling an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will, and even against such fundamental laws of nature as self-preservation.